Hello everybody, my name is John. This is my 2017 Subaru WRX, currently sitting at a Stage 2 Plus, tuned by Maperformance, still on the OTS tune. For those that don't know, that consists of the Maperformance intake, Maperformance downpipe, charge pipe, and intercooler. Just want to talk about my experiences with the tune, my experiences with the install, just the overall, whether or not it is worth the money, and yeah, let's get started on this. Alright, so to start off, I want to talk about the install. For the most part, everything was pretty straightforward. They have instructions for everything, the intake, the downpipe, charge pipe, intercooler. This is a top mount intercooler as well. Overall, I'd say the experience was pretty straightforward. Didn't have too many issues. I did run into an issue with the fact that the charge pipe does require you to relocate the stock bypass valve, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, brief summary of that, didn't really have any issues. This is something that, you know, if you've got some brief mechanical knowledge or minor mechanical knowledge in a buddy, there's no reason why you can't do pretty much all of these things in a day or two, in like a weekend. Another one of the really good points is the sounds are so much better than stock. The stock exhaust, the stock airbox, everything overall is really quiet. Can't really hear anything, not very exciting. The downpipe, once you open that up, you know, I personally love the sound of these cars. I love the flat forward 2-liter, the FA20. I think it sounds amazing. Lots of pops, lots of crackle. Very easy to do on command, as well as just under normal driving. It's very easy to also avoid. So if that's not really your thing, you don't really feel like, you know, having to hear all those pops, because I know that's not for everybody, but for me personally, I love it. That's definitely a plus. But for those who don't really like that, normal driving, just putting around town, no pops, no crackles, nothing. Really, really tame. As far as induction noise, I love it. The Maperformance intake does not come, it is not a boxed intake, it is actually an open intake. So they do provide you with a heat shield, which I ran it with and without that heat shield in my car, and I could see, because I have my access port over here, which I also got from Maperformance. I can monitor my intake air temperatures, and it does make a difference. It is actually much more significant than I thought. So the fact that they provide that heat shield, considering that it is not in a closed box, is very nice as well. But it being an open filter, it is much louder. I'll do a very small acceleration. You should be able to hear the induction noise, which, you know, still on the stock bypass valve, and just the induction noises in general are just so much louder, so much better. I personally love the induction noises. The overall quality of the products, I was very satisfied with. Getting the stainless steel piping for everything is absolutely worth it. The welds are so good. They're so professionally done. Everything, just the quality overall, so satisfying with it, so happy. Also, one of the benefits of the intercooler, Maperformance top mount intercooler, is unlike a front mount intercooler, that pretty much you're going to be having a giant empty space in your engine bay if you do with the front mount intercooler, and it just looks like something's missing, because, well, technically there is. Factory top mount intercooler, being able to use that same stock location, it allows you to still utilize the stock hood scoop, and makes the engine bay look much more complete overall. Now I want to start talking about the actual drivability of the tune, as well as my experiences with it. The top mount intercooler, the first thing that I noticed once I did the full Stage 2 Plus tune is the top end so much better. absolutely pulls all the way to redline. Unlike on the stock tune, which after about 5,000 RPM, somewhere around in that ballpark, you could feel the difference. It would fall on its face. It would just feel like it was gutless at that point. With this, it pulls all the way through to redline. So much better. The power is so much nicer. Also, one of the best things about this tune is there is no rev hang at all. The stock tune had absolutely atrocious rev hang in it. It was very noticeable under hard driving, especially shifting from first gear to second gear. If you were trying to drive quickly, you had to wait almost a full second before you shifted from first to second from the time that you depress the clutch pedal. Otherwise, you'll get awful rev hang, the car will jerk, it'll just be a horrible experience, and honestly, it slows the car down as well. So there is a performance issue with that as well. With this, that is not an issue at all. No rev hang. With the Access Sport, you can tune in no lift shift. While I wouldn't really recommend doing that on the stock transmission as well as the stock clutch, it is there. I have used it. It's very nice. Definitely helps stay in power, stay in boost. Really makes a difference. Now, that's not something, again, that's not something that I would recommend doing all the time. But if you want to race this car and you really want to beat that guy next to you, it's very nice to have. The no rev hang is so much better. I've also had extremely little feedback knock and fine knock alert. Every now and then I will get the -141 on the feedback knock, which anyone who knows that value will know that half the time that's just the AC being on, or that's considered like a ghost knock. Fine knock learn even less so, and even if I get it, it's that -141. It'll go away within about a few minutes of driving. On this tune, I have yet to ever experience a drop in dam. Alright guys, so pulling up to the highway here, going to show off the power of the Stage 2 Plus. Especially around town, it's much quicker than stock. You can get up to speed very quickly, but nothing that's going to be absolutely crazy. So you can go 100% full 10 out of 10 drivability on this car. It's very nice. I've also noticed better miles per gallon in just normal daily driving. Most of my miles are strictly city. Not very often am I ever on the highway. My average miles per gallon on the stock tune, I was roughly getting about 21 to 22. On this tune, if I drive conservatively, I can easily hit about 23 to 24. On the highway, when I do drive, if I got to make a longer drive, I did not notice nearly as big of a difference. Maybe a mile or two. The stock tune, I could probably get about 33 on average on the highway, depending on how fast I was going. With this one, I can probably bump that up to about 34, 35. Also, I want to talk about the throttle response. The throttle response is so much better. On the stock tune, I'm sure you guys have experienced this as well, especially in the lower RPMs. If you were trying to move quickly or get out of somebody's way and you needed to stomp on that gas pedal to be able to go, half the time it would be completely dead. You wouldn't really feel anything. There'd be a sudden it would just go 0 to 100. It would just have everything, which is, in my opinion, not safe. With this, don't run into that issue. When you press the throttle, it is there. It responds absolutely immediately. Also, the throttle input is much easier to regulate on this tune compared to the stock tune. The throttle input I noticed on the stock tune, on your OEM boost gauge, it actually will tell you your throttle percentage. And if you're running about 50% throttle, that car, this WRX, will still be pushing you into full boost. So even though it would say you're at half throttle, really it's giving it 100% input. With this, if you're at 50% throttle, you're at 50% throttle. I have suspicions that that contributes to the better miles per gallon as well. It's not an all or nothing type situation all of the time. Also, I just wanted to point out that just speaking to Maperformance and their tech lines, it's very easy to do. Their crew is extremely knowledgeable. They are nice. They know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. These guys are experts. They tune more than just Subaru. They've got their YouTube channel if you wanted to check them out. They do the new Supra. They do the Honda Civic Si. They've got the WRX STI, as well as, of course, the WRX and a few others. I've seen it even in an Infiniti Q50 on there. Now coming around to some of the cons, one of the first things I also noticed was, yes, much better top end with this intercooler on there, but there is also increased turbo lag. These cars, they spool up pretty darn quick, and even now with the increased turbo lag, it still spools up very quickly. But compared to the stock intercooler, it is noticeable. I can still get into full boost within a few hundred RPMs, but before it felt almost instant. Another thing I want to talk about is the fact that this is a top-mount intercooler. While yes, you do get to retain the functionality of the OEM hood scoop, it will never be as good as a front-mount intercooler. The front-mount intercooler, if you were looking at big power, the ultimate cooling, then you cannot beat that with a top-mount intercooler. But that only really applies if you're looking at big power. Somebody like me, my end goal is getting somewhere around 350 wheel. That is not going to be an issue with this top-mount intercooler. Something that I have noticed is sometimes it does not seem as though the car is hitting proper boost levels. It's very inconsistent. At first I thought it was possibly a boost leak. It still could be. I have checked it. I've done a pressure check. I can't seem to find any form of boost leak, but what I'm describing is some days it'll head max boost, it'll pull super hard, absolute beast, feel totally fantastic. Other times I'll only hit a max of 19 psi, and then going through the gear, it'll taper off to about 15 psi. That is not normal. Usually I can go all the way up and I'll peak out at 22, and I will continue pulling at about 18, 19 psi. Don't really know what's going on there. It could be the tune, it could be something else. Still haven't really figured it out, but that is something that's going on. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is the install. While overall, yes, it was extremely easy to do, it is something that you can totally do on your own in your garage with a friend. I did it by myself, so it's completely possible to do, but something that was extremely frustrating, and you'll hear a lot of people talk about it, is the top-mount intercooler. Removing the stock one really didn't give me a hard time at all, but I've heard of other people really struggling to do that. As far as installing the new Maperformance intercooler, now that was a struggle. The Maperformance intercooler is much bigger than the stock intercooler. So trying to fit it in that confined space, especially it being so close to that firewall, way to solve that issue. Something else I wanted to talk about is I had a really rough time in relocating the stock bypass valve. Now, they do have instructions that tell you how to do it, but I just don't understand why it's necessary in the first place, especially with companies like Cobb and Grimspeed. Their charge pipes, you can retain the stock bypass valve location and just avoid this headache altogether. With this one, basically you have to raise it about maybe 2 inches, and they give you silicone and worm clamps to do this, as well as a new vacuum line. It needs to be a different length. That was an absolute headache to deal with. Absolutely horrible. It was the worst part of the install. Granted, it was the only issue I had with the install, but that alone took me so much longer than it needed to, when if they would have retained the stock bypass valve location, would have been completely avoided. Something that I have heard happen as a point of failure is the MAF extension cable. I have had mine for 2 years, have not had any issues with it, but I have heard in some cases that it is a common point of failure, and that can cause a whole lot of issues with your car. If you cannot get a proper reading from your sensor, in some cases you can't even drive your car. Now again, I personally have never run into this issue. Had mine on for a few years now, had it well over 10,000 miles, but that is something to keep in mind because it is something completely possible. Overall, I would say it's absolutely worth it. I love it. Every penny was a penny well spent. If you guys want to see any more of this car, any more videos of this car, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, comment some ideas. I would love to make more. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video.